Hello and welcome back to our channel where we dive deep into Spring Boot and all its features. If you're passionate about building better Java applications, you're in the right place. This video is part of our comprehensive Spring Boot tutorial series. Today, we're zooming in on a specific, yet powerful part of the Spring framework, the @primary annotation. The @primary annotation is a simple, yet powerful tool in Spring Boot. It helps you manage your beans more effectively when you have multiple beans of the same type. But why is this important, and how does it really affect your applications? We'll cover all that and more. In the next few minutes, we'll explore what the @primary annotation is, how you can use it in real-world scenarios, and I'll show you step-by-step how to implement it. So make sure to watch till the end. If you're excited about today's session, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell to get notified about new uploads. Also, share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. I love seeing your feedback and it helps us create more content that you want to see. Alright, let's get started. Let's start with the basics. Before we dive deeper, it's important to understand exactly what the @primary annotation is and why it's used in Spring Boot applications. In Spring Framework, and by extension Spring Boot, we often deal with situations where multiple beans of the same type are defined in the context. When Spring needs to inject such a bean by type, it faces an ambiguity if no additional details are provided. This is where @primary annotation comes into play. The @primary annotation helps Spring determine which bean should be considered as the default bean among multiple candidates. When you annotate a bean with @primary, you are telling Spring, hey, if you ever need to choose and you're unsure, pick this one. To illustrate, remember in our last video we created various greeting service beans like greeting service simple, English greeting service, Hindi greeting service, and Spanish greeting service. However, Spring struggled to identify which bean to inject. We tackled this by using the @qualifier annotation to inject a specific bean. But what if we want Spring to automatically inject a default bean, say greeting service simple, when no specific bean is specified? This is where @primary shines. By marking a bean as primary, we give Spring the cue to pick it as the default bean when faced with multiple options. It's like telling Spring, if no specific instructions are given, such as not specifying any specific bean using the @qualifier annotation, then go with the default or primary one. In our previous video, we explored the implementation of 4 variations of greeting service simple, English greeting service, Hindi greeting service, and Spanish greeting service. We introduced the qualifier controller class, designed to manage greeting service as a dependency. However, Spring encountered a hurdle with multiple beans. Last time, we solved this issue by using the @qualifier annotation to specify which bean to inject. Today, we're shifting gears to mark greeting service simple as the primary bean. Let's delve into what happens next and explore the impact of this configuration. Let's create a new class and name it Primary Annotation Controller. Next, annotate this with the @rest controller annotation. Next, define a greeting service variable inside the Primary Annotation Controller class and define a constructor for dependency injection. Define a new method called getGreeting. This method will interact with our greeting service to fetch a personalized greeting message. Next, annotate this method with the @getMapping annotation and set the path to /primary/greeting. This annotation will help us map this method to a specific URL endpoint. Alright, now that we've written our Primary Annotation Controller class and added the necessary annotations, it's time to start our application and see everything in action. I'll go ahead and launch the application now. As it starts up, keep an eye on the console for any messages or logs. As we can see, our application didn't start. Just scroll above. Here you'll see that Spring found multiple beans of greeting service, making it difficult to decide which bean to inject into the primary annotation controller class. Right below, you'll also find that Spring provides solutions using the @primary annotation or the @qualifier annotation to resolve this issue. If you missed our video on the @qualifier annotation, I recommend watching it first. Alright, let's make a quick adjustment to our greeting service impl class. We'll mark it as primary so that Spring knows to use this implementation by default. Open up the greeting service impl class and add the @primary annotation. This simple step will help us resolve the multiple beans issue we encountered earlier. Start the Spring Boot application. Our application has successfully started on port 8080. Open your web browser. Type localhost 8080/primary/greeting into the address bar of your web browser and press enter. Now, take a look at this. We've received a welcome to our channel response. We received this message from the greeting service impl class. It's working perfectly because we marked this class as primary. In the primary annotation controller class, we didn't specify which bean to inject, so Spring automatically injected our primary bean. In our previous video, we used the @qualifier annotation within the qualifier controller class to specify that Spring should inject the English greeting service. However, we've made a change since then. We've marked the greeting service impl class as primary. Now, the question arises, what will Spring do in this scenario? Will it inject the English greeting service bean as specified by the @qualifier annotation, or will it inject the greeting service impl bean because it's marked as primary? Let's find out together. Since the qualifier controller already exposes a REST API, let's open a web browser and see what response we get. This will help us determine which greeting service is being injected by Spring. Let's open a new tab in the browser and type localhost 8080/qualifier/greeting, then press enter. As you can see, we received a hello response. In the qualifier controller class, we injected the English greeting service, which returns a hello greeting. On the other hand, our greeting service impl returns welcome to our channel. This confirms that Spring indeed injected the English greeting service, and everything is working as expected. It's worth noting that Spring gives more preference to beans specified by the @qualifier annotation. If the qualifier annotation is missing, then Spring tries to inject the primary bean. When both @qualifier and @primary are applicable, @qualifier takes precedence over @primary. This means that if you specify a bean with @qualifier, Spring will use that bean for autowiring even if another bean of the same type is marked as @primary. This allows for more fine-grained control over dependency injection by explicitly naming the bean that should be used. Let's delve into what happens when we mark multiple beans as primary. Will Spring be able to resolve the dependency, or will it face challenges? Now, let's mark the Hindi greeting service class as primary as well. How will Spring handle multiple primary beans? Let's find out. Start the application. Our server didn't start. As you can see, there are some trace prints in the console. Just scroll above. As you can see, Spring has encountered an issue. It says that no qualifying bean of type greeting service is available and that more than one primary bean was found. This means that Spring is unable to resolve which primary bean needs to be injected. In Spring, the @primary annotation is meant to designate a bean as the preferred choice when more than one bean of the same type exists in the Spring container and is eligible for autowiring. However, you cannot mark more than one bean with the @primary annotation for the same type without causing confusion or configuration issues. If you do so, Spring will likely throw an exception during the context initialization because it creates ambiguity, which @primary is intended to resolve. If multiple beans of the same type are marked as @primary, Spring does not have a clear way to decide which one to inject, as the purpose of the @primary annotation is to single out one bean as the preferred candidate. To manage multiple beans of the same type, you should use the @qualifier annotation to specify exactly which bean should be auto-wired in each situation, or redesign your configuration to ensure that only one bean of a type is marked as @primary. Thank you for watching today's video. If you found this content valuable, please consider subscribing to stay updated with future videos. If you have any questions or need further clarification, feel free to ask. Have a wonderful day ahead.